Good morning. Welcome to Patenting AI, hosted by Idea to IPO. We want to thank Rob for putting these events on and getting you all to come here. My name is Stephen Colby, and I have been a patent attorney. I've been doing patents for about 30 years. The first 10 years of that was mostly as inventor. Then in around 2001, I became a patent agent and eventually a patent attorney in 2004. And I have been practicing patent prosecutor since then. A patent prosecutor is a person who writes patents and gets them through the patent office to issuance. Right? I do some litigation. I have two cases pending right now, but 80% of my work has traditionally been patent prosecution. And I'm a partner at Ramon Law. Ramon Law is about 230 attorneys throughout the world. We have offices everywhere from Tokyo to Dubai and everywhere in between. We have about 20 patent attorneys. We have attorneys who do just about everything else under the sun, from aircraft leasing to real estate to family law, etc. We are a little bit different in that we are a semi-virtual law firm, and we have always been that way. In other words, we do have offices, but they are primarily admins and conference rooms. Most of the attorneys work from wherever they please. I currently work from Reno, Nevada, and there's actually a little snow that came back, so that's good news for the skiers here. We're going to have a little bit of really late spring skiing. Today, I'm going to be talking about patenting AI. This is one of our most popular topics, and it is pretty important in today's world. As everybody knows, AI is in a big boom right now, or should I say bubble, but whatever. It is really something that is going to change the way we are living and probably in the next 20 or 30 years, change a lot about society. So what are we going to do? We're going to talk about how to get patents on AI. And probably the first or the second question that you should be asking yourself is why? Okay. Why would a early stage startup uh, go to the trouble of spending tens of thousands of dollars to get a patent portfolio? And the answer is valuation. The answer is not if you're a startup to go pounding on the doors of your competitors. The patent litigation is very expensive. Working on right now has a budget of a little over $4 million. To give you an example. So my practice is primarily early stage startups, and talk is going to be directed at that group of people, right? So it's the question is why. This is a great picture for why. You're the little white thing, okay? That's a big fish. He's either going to say, hey, little guy, you're just in time for lunch, and then gobble, gobble, or he's going to say something nice. And a patent portfolio can make the difference. When you are doing very well and a big company comes knocking on your door, they might, consider acquiring you or doing some really great deal with you. And their question is going to be, they're going to run a spreadsheet on, okay, if we take 500 of our engineers and just reproduce this, could we do it all in 4 months? Or should we pay a lot of money for this? There's going to be a number of factors that make them choose paying a lot of money for you. One of them is you, right? Are you good to work with? Will you stay on? Do you have a good team? Do they like you? Okay. The other is your customer base, right? Do you have 2 million registered users or 10 million registered users? That's great. Um, the third factor is your people. So if you have a very strong IP portfolio, that pushes them into, it's probably better that we buy these guys. And I have seen companies go in the other way and try to work around somebody that they know has a good portfolio. And unfortunately, that usually ends up in litigation. Company even wins is may not do as well as it would have. But so this is you do what you can. And Bill, my job as a patent prosecutor is to get you a patent portfolio that increases the value of your company. And I have seen cases where the patent portfolio made the difference between one of my clients being purchased and one of their competitors getting purchased instead. And fortunately, my client was portfolio, and everybody lived happily ever after. Right? Except in mine. Don't worry, I'm going to get to the AI part in more slide after this. Why? Okay, so understanding of everything we're going to talking about. So that means you need to have a strategy more valuable, right? What this means is I want to patent things that are cool. Those are the things that are going to say a prospective customer and say, you need to use us, you need to buy us, our services because blah. So that's what we want to cover. And the early stage startup, they often go, oh, what's the cool problem engineering solved, right? And it may not be so important. So keep in mind that your patent strategy needs to be product driven. It needs to have a focus on valuation, right? And what I do for my clients is when they're doing a later round, like their A or B round, I will actually make a chart and I call it a cluster map. Oh, my coffee is being delivered. Look at this. You see how great it is to work for Ramon Law? Thank you. Okay. That was my child. She's wonderful. Okay. Um, and now I get my coffee. I'm going to be able to speak more clearly. Mm-hmm. Oh, and now my brain starts working. Both brain cells are bouncing together. Yeah. Okay. So, what I do for my clients in their later stages is I make what's called a cluster map. I didn't invent this. I learned it from a very good patent attorney named John Farrell, who I first worked for about 25 years ago, a little over, more than 26 years ago, almost. And he would make these cluster maps, and what the map showed was the 3 or 4 key features about the company in a bubble, kind of in the middle of the slide. And then all the patent portfolio were around those bubbles, around those key features with their own bubbles. Here's U.S. patent so and so. Here's an application here. Here's a PCT application, so on, right? And then there would be lines drawn between all these, showing which patents related to which key features. And this is important because the idea was, quote me, to make IP more than just a checkbox on the investor's due diligence, right? So you want to convey to the investor or the acquirer that's going to buy you in a few years, you want to convey the value of your patent portfolio. And so you have to develop that portfolio with that in mind. So, for example, if you think the large multinational company from Korea is a potential acquirer, right? Some of your patent claims should look awful a lot like your technology and theirs blended together, right? So that the future that you can see where, let's say, Samsung buys you, right? And you are now part of their phone. Let's say you're a cool new antenna or something, right? You want to claim the antenna, but you want to claim the antenna along with other features of the Samsung phone. Okay, so that is how you can make your patent portfolio really reflect value. Okay, now let's go on to the next question. What is patentable? Now we're getting close to AI, right? So people still come to me and say, um, uh, I'm sorry, I'm reading the questions. So somebody's got an AI assistant. Okay. So let me back up. If you have any questions, please put them in the question and answer tab. When I'm finished with my lecture, which will be in about 45, 50 minutes, I will go through first the questions in the Q&A tab, and then I will go through any questions. I'll skim through the chat really quickly to see what's going on. If you see me looking over here, that's because I'm looking at one of my other screens. Okay. Hopefully my video and audio will stay with us. All right. So what's patentable? Lots, right? I probably 80% of the patents I write are software, right? There's some wearable devices, headsets, displays, but software is a very heavy area for patenting. So if you're a software developer, patents are definitely within your realm. Okay. Things that aren't patentable, the laws of nature, things that have been done before, things that are obvious combinations of things that have done before, right? There's a process that the courts have developed to decide what is and what is not patentable. And at the heart of that process is there some technological improvement that you've achieved, right? You may take 3 or 4 or 5 different things off the shelf, right? And produce something, right? Whether it's logical elements in software or actual physical devices. If you put them all together, you produce something that's innovative, something that produces a useful technical result, right? So I was trained to write towards the European standard, which requires a technical result. That's what their requirement is. And so I was lucky as the law changed in the United States, my clients and I were lucky. Most of my patents held up really well. Okay. A lot of patents didn't as the law changed in the last 10 years, but, and it's still changing, but a good patent attorney will try to keep ahead of it. So when you're writing your patent, a good patent attorney is going to write down the technical results and the technical improvements and explain how the claims achieve that, right? Some examples of things that are definitely not patentable. A algorithm, period, an algorithm that calculates the risk on a financial option, right? And all it does is spit out a number, right? The risk is 98%, right? You have a 2% failure rate, so you better build that into your financial models, okay? That's not patentable, right? No technical result. You could have a piece of software that takes data from an accelerometer, and when that accelerometer reaches a certain threshold, it applies brakes on a car, right? Anti-lock brakes. That's definitely patentable subject matter. You get a technical result. When this was first developed, right, there was, you could develop just a system that slammed the brakes on, right? And then somebody came along and added the idea of pulsing the brakes, pumping the brakes. So when you lock up the wheels on a modern car, you slam your foot on the brakes and it'll actually automatically pump for you, right? So that was a technical improvement over the prior art, even though the sensors already existed and ways of turning on brakes already existed. There was a technical improvement there, which produced a technical result. So let's give another example. And I'm going to go through some very successfully patenting AI and the strategies we use. Another example is sorting data in a new or useful way, right? That can be a technical result. Right? Adding elements to a website, right? Instead of just randomly putting products on an e-commerce store, you figured a better way to do it. Patentable subject matter, right? So no matter what you're doing, really to decide what is and isn't patentable is probably something that you should consult a patent attorney about, right? Because there's a very fine line, and the patent office will In many cases, especially if it's business-related patent, they will push back hard. But patents are still quite feasible. Right? I do patents on things like dating apps or um, image processing, uh, stuff like that. You'll see in a minute. I'm going to give you um, a bunch of examples of just that. All right. So here are several. These are by far not the only approaches. Okay. Um, how to get good if you're a company that's using AI or where AI is core to your technology, you now ask yourself, what's the strategy that we're going to do to create patent portfolio, right? And you look at all the different things you're doing, right? You're putting a little green block on top of a building, perhaps, in my slide. Um, and these are some strategies that I've actually used in the past. So I'm going to give you actual examples, all right? The first one is building data, right? I have had a number of clients where we patented the approach to actually generating more data so that they can retrain and better train their model. That's wonderful, okay? Because it gives you a bunch of things that really increase your valuation, right? It improves your model, but it also gives you invaluable data, right? Probably data that nobody else has, okay? So um, building data, how you build your data is good word, right? We want to focus on the technical result. I'm going to give you a great example of how uh, feedback loops are great. Okay, again, it's a system that does self-improvement to train your model. You bootstrap. We're going to talk about some new AI applications that I'm seeing. A lot of cool stuff. Patentable. Let's go start with the first one, building data. And here's a real world example. Boom. Okay, this is the name of a company. It's called Cloud, big companies in image processing. And it turns out that the value of this company right now is in the data, right? I mean, they have great models. They have great models done well on a cell phone. And what they tag images really well. So instead of just beach or person, it's a woman walking on the beach at sunset. That's an elegant tag, right? It really explains the content of an image, right? And they were actually, I don't know if they still are, but they were the default on many Samsung phones for blind people. Um, so you could use your phone to describe your surroundings or describe a can of soup in your cupboard, right? Um, so they started off when there wasn't a lot of image data, right? There weren't big blocks of image data, right? So their first patents were on how to decide to generate more data. And what they did was they had people in the Philippines, right? Call center type outfits, hundreds of people in front of computers, and people from all over the world who were using their app or in Samsung's uh, operating system were sending them pictures of all kinds of things. And they would receive the picture and they would use a piece of logic software to decide if their AI could identify that picture with great confidence, or if it couldn't do it with great confidence, it would send it to a human reviewer. The human reviewer would type in a nice tag, a full sentence, right? And then that piece of data, the tag would go back to the customer, right? Who sent the picture. But that piece of data, the image and the tag together, is saved, right? It becomes a new piece of training data. So in all, they generated about 750 million very well tagged images, right? Which is probably the best and largest database right now. They're busy licensing it out, right? So, but the process moving, of deciding how the uh, image should be handled, should it be handled by an AI or should it go to a human? That's something they patented. Okay, and this is their patent. Okay, so that was one approach. This is building data, right? And this stuff is, it turned out to be building the real value in the company. Okay, so it was quite successful. All right, that was first example, building data. All right, technical result. Okay, this is a client, another client. Um, Ultrasound.ai, they are a company that does prediction of premature birth based on ultrasound images. Right? So the idea is they could use an ultrasound, right, of a woman's womb with a fetus in it, and decide, oh, is this how many more weeks or how many more days is it before this baby can be born? Right? And that's very useful because if it's going to be premature, like if it's right, you can do things. You can give the mother hormones. You can have the mother stay in bed rest. Do all kinds of things to help extend the term so the baby is full term, right? Um, and so this can be very, very helpful in pregnancies. It's very useful. Uh, the thing that helped a lot in getting their patent out was they gave a quantitative result, okay, that a doctor could act on, right? So instead of just saying, yes, no, this is going to be premature or not, or it looks like you're going to be 3 weeks early, they gave a quantitative result and said, okay, this is the probability distribution of when this baby is going to be born, right? And that result made, you know, we argued in front of the patent office, and that got these patents issued, right? Okay. It was a good technical improvement over pre-existing things. So when you get results, sprinkle in quantitation somewhere in your claims, right? That can be a big help, right? And now this company is doing it very well. It's a licensing model, right? So ultrasounds from all over the world go um, get sent to them, and they process them and send back a result. They also have on IP on things like what if the ultrasound wasn't very good? Okay, so they have feedback. I'm skipping ahead just a little bit, but this client had feedback loop too. Um, uh, they had a feedback loop um, where, as you were taking the ultrasound, it would tell the ultrasound technician when they had enough data. So if the ultrasound technician hadn't gotten quite enough data from one point of view, the system could tell the ultrasound technician if you need a little more over here. Okay. And that was another great improvement. That was an example of using AI for feedback. This advising was done by AI, of course. Right. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about the feedback example. Okay. And this client's not around anymore. But it was founded by Adrian Kaler, who is a real genius. Being a patent attorney, the best part is working with really smart people. And Adrian he wrote the O'Reilly book on computer vision. He was a member of the Stanford team that won the DARPA Grand Challenge. And he had a robotics company. Um, and I'm going to show some images of it. And he went from, uh, he used his ability to understand images, right, to go and to do computer vision. He applied it to robotics in a really cool way. And he set up simple feedback loops between cameras, AIs, and robotic actuators. Let me show you what an actual picture from this patent. Okay, there's a robot. This is a great example of my personal artistic skill. Enjoy it, folks. It's not the Mona Lisa, but when you have a patent uh, attorney doing your drawings, this is what you get stuck with. That is supposed to be a robot. Figure two, robot has a base. It has a motor, 110. Okay. It has a tendon, 120. That's a cable, right? And then it has a bunch of joints and a manipulator at the end, maybe 140. Okay, so that's a generic robot. There's two ways of building robots. two general ways at least. One is to put the motor in the base. The motors are heavy, right? The other is to put the motors up at each joint. But the problem with putting a motor, let's say, near the manipulator 140 is that that heavy motor means that the motor at the previous joint has to be bigger, which means the motor down, down at the base, 125 near the base, has to be even bigger. And you run into a land of diminishing returns. You can only get so strong, right? And the motors get big, expensive. It takes a lot of power to move heavy things. So the alternative is use a cable tendon, right? It doesn't have to be metal, but often is. So the problem with a cable is that it changes length, right? In the morning when the factory's cold, it might be shorter, a little bit shorter than in the evening or in the late afternoon when the factory's 10 degrees hotter. As it ages, right, it stretches a little bit. So all these things make a difference. And if you want really reproducible robotics, you can't deal with that. Okay, that's a problem. So Adrian's invention was to use cameras, right? So, and figure three kind of describes that. I'm not going to go into great detail, but you would get image data in, and you would use an AI to perceive that, and you would adjust how you're controlling the motor to compensate for any changes, right? If you expected the manipulator to move by exactly 1/2 inch, and it was 2% more than a 1/2 inch, right? You can say, oh, I've got to I've got to compensate, right? And the next time you move it, you tell the motor to move a little bit less, and that way you can get very accurate movement. So this was a very good example of AI feedback. If you can find a situation like this, um, that's a great source of trying to patent things. Okay. And again, of course, we are getting technical improvements. There's a technical result here. And this is definitely an improvement over a camera and a motor and a robot, right? Right. So that's what helps easily make this into the realm of patentable subject matter. All right, bootstrapping. Okay, this is another inventor. This is about the same time. And this was a company that was doing home care, right? So there's cameras or radar units in elderly people's or people who need care, disabled people's homes or apartments. And the idea was that very often these people had home care people would come for a few hours a day, right, and help get dressed, shower, maybe make a meal. Um, as they needed more care, sometimes they needed 24-hour care, and basically they ended up leaving their house and going into a nursing home. So there were these people who were helping home care assistants, right? And there's a desire to say, okay, we want to train an AI and have cameras and watch the person, make sure they're okay. But how do we get data, right? How do you put 1,000 cameras into people's homes and then wait for them to fall down or spill their plate or fall asleep with their mouth open or whatever, not make it to the bathroom, whatever things are happening. Okay, collecting that data would be really tough, right? You got to figure out how to do it. And so what this, again, another very intelligent inventor did was she said, okay, let's build a feedback loop. Let's give a tablet to these home care people, right? We're going to collect the data from cameras. And then when the home care person goes in, we're going to send a few questions to the tablet. And they're going to ask our client, the person who's being cared for, how are things? So for example, it might be, it looks like you got up 5 times last night to go to the bathroom. Are you feeling okay? And this could be the lead into a bladder infection, or it could be that there was a big party next door, right? Or the woman had an entire bottle of wine the evening before, right? So this is the way to build data, bootstrapping, right? The company was providing a useful service right away. In other words, it was digitizing the notebooks that the caregivers normally carried around with them. And at the same time, it was setting up a way to build data about activity. And something like in-home radar is actually really sensitive. It can measure people's breathing rates. So if somebody's sitting at the couch and they stop breathing, the radar can realize that. Okay, it can know when there's been an issue fast. Okay. Anyway, this is a great example of where you don't have AI to train or data to train your AI, but um, this company figured a way to provide full results, useful information right away, while generating the data that would eventually make them very successful, right? Okay, so those were for the examples that I had. Okay, now I'm going to talk about some of the new applications. Okay, this has a copyright of 2024. So I'm going to expand on this uh, list, but I'm going to give you some examples of AI patent work. Um, Three-way chats. This is I'm sure that everybody on has at least chatted with ChatGPT or Claude or something like that and had a two-way chat with an AI. But what if there's more than just two parties involved? Okay, so it's a game, and there's two avatars representing real people, and they're at a bar, and the bartender is walking around and serving them drinks. Okay, this is a simple example, but there are more complicated examples that occur in non-virtual circumstances. Uh, the bartender needs to know when to interrupt the two avatars. So they're talking with each other. ChatGPT's every time it gets a prompt, it gives a response of some sort, hopefully, right? The bartender is not built that way. It has to listen to the conversation and decide when what it has to say is relevant or not. The same thing could be um, maybe I won't say I won't name a company, but maybe there'll be an in-home device that orders pizza for you. It has to be aware of when to act rather than just saying the name, somebody's name, right? There's lots of situations where the in-home device needs to be intelligent. It needs to be able to listen to what's going on, understand the context, and know when to pipe in or not, right? Um, so three-way chat, that's something that's we were doing 2 years ago, right? Um, Marketplace for AI models, yes, definitely something that's been looked at. Um, uh, when we first did this, it wasn't much agents. And there's definitely things that have developed since then. Um, but yeah, this was, something to do with AI, and we wrote patent applications that were did well on this. Okay, IVF. This is in vitro fertilization. This is more baby making stuff, right? I have a very successful client that's in over a third of U.S. fertility clinics, right? They take data from embryos and can tell you the probability that that embryo will result in a live birth, which is extremely valuable. So if you have 5 embryos and you're going to do implantation, you can pick the embryo that's most likely to succeed. You can decide, now before this company, doctors would often implant 2 or 3 embryos, hoping one of them would work. And of course, what happens is all 3 work. Okay, so being able to predict um, the success of an embryo is very valuable. It's done by AI. This company started off with images, with vision. In other words, in the embryo storage vials or tubes, there's actually cameras. Those have existed for quite a while, right? So by analyzing the video of the embryo, they were able to predict how well it would, whether or not it was going to result in a live birth. And of course, since they got into the clinics, now the real value companies, they have tremendous amounts of fertility data on everything because they see the whole medical record, right? So very successful, right? Um, Playlists for music DJs, one of my favorites. You know, how to filter requests. Um, if you're a DJ and you get a request for a song, their AI will tell you where in your current playlist to put the song, right? It'll go best here. The transition will be best, right? Um, it'll help DJs build playlists that are interesting, right? Um, that's fun application. IoT security. Yes, we all know about cameras everywhere. A big part of that is having the AI on the camera itself, so you're not. Sorry, hold on. Gotta drink my coffee. So let's imagine you have a school with, 400 cameras. You don't want 400 live video feeds going over a pipe, right? That just gets expensive. And then the analysis gets done on somebody's servers, which is expensive, right? All that server time, and analyzing hundreds of video feeds. So you want the camera to be smart. You want it to look at it, what it's capturing, have an AI on the Internet of Things, the endpoint device. And that AI then says, okay, this might be a problem. I'm going to send it up to the server or to a human, and they're going to analyze and figure it out. Okay, is it a gun or a bag of Doritos? Right. And preferably, the good companies have a person who looks at it and says, no, that's a bag of Doritos rather than a false alarm. Right. Um, now that I've done that, oh, AI, there's so many fun things. A lot of navigation, um, flight systems. Um, One of my favorites, and I'm not doing this one. This is that I read about, came out of MIT, and it's AI looking at plasmas in fusion systems. So when you're trying to do fusion to create energy, you're trying to maintain a plasma at really high pressure, and it can collapse. Well, the people have developed AIs that can predict that collapse and tweak the magnetics and the current going through the magnets to try to prevent it, to extend the life of it. So this is pretty cool. This is AI actually, maybe someday, right, contributing to energy generation. Um, let's see. I think I have a couple more things, two more slides that I'm going to give you. Let's see, what time is it? Okay, we're on time. Right? Good, good. Okay. Here's a freebie. Everybody on, we got a good crowd of people. I have a lecture, and this is something I recommend everybody. I have a lecture on understanding the patent. Okay, and this is um, really important because I get a lot of people coming to me and they really don't understand. They think they need patents, but they don't understand the rights in it, or they don't understand how to read one. Right? Uh, Sometimes people come to me and say, oh my gosh, my competitor just got a patent on everything we do, and we're doomed. And by the way, the patent office sucks because this is all old. Well, it's ridiculous, blah, 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 right? And I look at the patent, and there's a huge 50-page specification, and then there's like some short, very narrow claims, right? It's the claims that matter, right? There can be anything in the spec, I don't care. The spec just needs to support the claims. You can have a huge specification and a very narrow set of claims, right? That are based on one little sentence somewhere in that specification. Okay. So a patent can describe a lot of stuff, but actually cover very little of it, right? Or publication, right? Sometimes people come to me with publications and say, oh my God, look at and this is a published application. It's not an approved patent. Let me make that very clear. So people come to me and say, oh my God, look at this. Um, Somebody got a patent on blah, 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 blah. And I said, well, that's just a published application. And, their claims that they actually get are probably going to be pretty narrow, right? Um, so you need to be able to tell the difference. Anyway, the point of all this, priority dates, families, how claims work, broad versus narrow claims. Sometimes somebody will come to me and say, oh, I got a patent. I want to now enforce it against everybody. It, it I got it done for $5,000 by some patent agent in Minneapolis. Sorry, anybody from Minneapolis, but and I look at it and it's got one claim and and the guy says to me, it's got everything I do in it. So the more limitations in a claim, the narrower it is. And this guy's showing me a claim where it would really be hard to infringe. I mean, you'd have to go out of your way to make sure you include everything here, right? It's the narrowest claim in the world. And the person does understand that all those words in the claim are very narrow patent that he paid 5 grand for. That's it's worthless. It's expensive wallpaper. Anyway, I have a lecture. My point here, I have a lecture, and if anybody sends me an email, all right, or a note on LinkedIn, I will send them the link to the lecture about understanding the patent. I'm not giving that lecture anymore. I did it a couple of times, and I'm happy with the way it turned out. And now I'm just giving people links to the video. So if you write to me, um, I will send you a link to understanding the patent. I'm now going to look. Oh, we don't have any questions on the Q&A. Okay, no questions. Ooh. So I'm now. Oh, wait. We have one more thing. You're going to send me something, right? Ha ha ha. There we go. Okay. This is old data. We're no longer in 14 countries, slightly less. Our Moscow office closed. Like, um, and I don't know how many offices we have now, but we're pretty global from Tokyo, Central South America, um, uh, and we are about 230 attorneys. So we can help you with immigration, we can help you with corporate formation, light lease, a 747, we can help you. Okay, got it all. All right, I'm gonna now. It is only been 45 minutes, but I'm now going to uh, quickly go through the chat and see if there are any. Oh, here we go. Okay, so we have a question. Thank you from Anonymous. Anonymous comes to all my talks. Yeah. And AI help me file a patent. Well, I actually today a company, um, uh, and if you that is offering AI drafting software I mean, patent drafting, AI-based patent drafting software. And they asked me to do a beta test and do a review of their product for them. And I'm going to be doing that over the next couple of weeks. And okay, so the question, well, I'm going off on a tangent, but I will answer that question eventually. Don't worry. I have tried probably a half a dozen AI tools. Uh, And some of them are better than others. I have found really good results in some search situations. Like I had a client that was about to abandon an older patent, and I sent it to one of these companies and said, "Can you find an infringer for this?" And they sent me back a report that had a bunch of infringers. So if somebody has a question about their patent, I go to that company. These people worked for me. Um, so that worked really well. Actually doing the draft, the problem with AI, you have to understand how AI works. And I assume if you're in this space, you have a pretty good understanding. If you don't, there's um, a good white paper by the founder of Wolfram Research. That's the Mathematica software company. I don't remember his name. But if you search Wolfram Research AI, Understanding AI white paper, it explains it. You know, uh, so AI doesn't understand a lot of stuff. I mean, it produces something that's just beyond above gobbledygook, but it doesn't get an invention. It doesn't know what's important. Systems I've tried will talk just as much about the network, the computer network, as they will the real invention, right? It doesn't understand how the invention fits into a business. It doesn't understand the importance of technical results. It doesn't understand so much how a product fits into the product line or in the competitive market. And really, that is I don't think that patent attorneys are going to be replaced anytime too soon. I don't have to worry, right? I still have 10 years to go, and I think I'm going to be fine. Um, a lot of I mean, I have seen AI produce, 100, 150 pages of junk, and it's like, oh my God, right? I don't, and the problem is, I look at that, I look at the client and say, if I were to read this through, it would cost you more money than if I were to start from scratch, right? Um, so I haven't been using just AI in some cases. And I'm going to give you an example right now. This is one that I know I can talk about. And it had to do with sailboats. So it was sails for sailboats. And it was the idea of using smart materials, like these are like metal ribbons that change length, using them to tune the sail, right? So you put a voltage on it and the ribbon tightens up and the sail isn't quite as baggy, right? Um, in the old days, what I would have done is I would have gone to Wikipedia and I would have said, you know, I would have looked up smart materials and I would have found a list of all possible smart materials that I, right, could use. And I would have put that list in the patent application, because we're going to figure out what different applications will use different materials. Um, Now I go to Claude and I say, give me a list of all changing the shape of a fabric. And it gives me a nice answer, and I cut and paste to put that in, right? Um, you have to be a little bit careful because something done by an AI is not patentable, right? So this is important if you're going to have the AI help you invent. Don't, right? Um, a few years, it was like 30 years ago, MIT for battery chemistry, and I read the article, and I'm like, oh my God, if I were an examiner, any battery that came out of MIT would be scrutinized like heck, right? Um, so if you can use AI, but if AI comes up with an idea that wasn't original, that could cause a serious problem in your patent. All right, it could be held invalid because of it. Um, AI can help, and I also think AI can help proofreading. I mean, I don't use grammar, and it improves writing. Okay, so that's a tool. AI can find mistakes that I've done in my patent. I've got a reference number that's not consistent. Um, so I'm going to give advice to the company that I'm going to talk to this afternoon. Anybody wants their name, I would be happy to give it to you, right? If you want a software to do this. I don't recommend you if you're going to do something on your own with I recommend that you at least consult a patent attorney. So usually what I do with early stage, with unfunded startups is I'll work with the inventors so that, we're talking just a few $1,000s, not tens of thousands, right? And we'll get a provisional on file cheap, okay? Where I'm advising the client on what to write, giving them an outline. Fill in this outline, okay, and I'll write the claims. Okay. So working together like that is a really good way to reduce the cost and make sure you have a good provisional application. Um, okay, did I answer the question? Can I help me file a patent? Yes. You mean write it, I assume. The actual filing you want to do yourself. You don't want the AI to do that, I promise. Okay, anonymous. How much can I save using AI to file a patent instead of hiring a patent attorney? Nothing. Honest answer. Well, rather than have AI do it, there's a book called Patent Pending in 24 Hours by Noah Press. You can buy it at Amazon. It's about a $40 book. You can buy that, read the book, and then write a patent application yourself. Okay. That will be better than anything an AI will do. Yeah. Um, don't, the AI won't understand what's important, right? Um, okay, then Anonymous asked, how about something very useful called a PCT application? And that stands for Patent Cooperation Treaty. A PCT application is basically an option. It gives you, depending on the country, another 18 or 19 months to decide to go into individual countries, right? There's no such thing as a global patent. It's not it's not cost effective either, right? Even the biggest companies don't patent everywhere. Probably the biggest patenters in terms of global scope are pharmaceutical companies, right? They patent in the most countries. And sometimes agriculture. I have some clients that are in the ag space, and they patent, throughout South America and Turkey and Kazakhstan and all these different places, right? Where certain fruits and vegetables are grown. Um, where was I? The PPT application is kind of expensive. It's, you know, the filing fees are 3 to 4 thousand, maybe. It depends on the size of the application. And then at the end of that time period, you have to go individually into specific countries or regions, the EPO being the biggest region, and that covers most of Europe. So the patent office in Switzerland, where the EPO is, um, will do the examination for you and stuff like that. And then there, if you get a patent application approved, then you can say, okay, I want France, uh, Britain, Germany, and Italy, or whatever, Greece. Yeah. So you pick your countries after, and then it's a few more dollars you spend to get that specific country. So you have to file your PCT within 1 year of your first filing. So if you file a US provisional or a US non-provisional, that sets the deadline for filing your PCT application. Also, we have some flexibility in the US about doing continuations in parts and improving our specification, adding things. That doesn't exist outside the US. So your PCT application has to be really well written. It's definitely not something you're going to do yourself. But yeah, there is a mechanism, and your patent attorney will explain how to do that. The PCT filing is actually pretty complicated. Um, so definitely something you want an attorney to do. Um, Great. Let's see. That's it. We answered the questions there. Now I'm going to glance over here. Hold on. Book mentioned for DUI patent. Yeah, Nobel Press. Good. That's something good. You're just reading it to understand is nice, right? And then you can ask questions of your patent attorney. And you can be a more informed uh, client. That's why, again, if you send me a note to this email right here, stephen.colby@ramonlaw.com, I would be happy to send you a link to my Understanding the Patent video, which, um, and let's see, anything else? Book mention. Okay. Takeaways from the meeting. Review and answer questions. Yeah. Oh, that's some note taker. Okay. Thank you, note taker. Animations. I'm using, yeah, I gotta get a new modem. All right. It's supposed to be fiber, right? Gigabit, or we're definitely not there. Um, note taker. All right. That's it. Everybody who registered should get a link to the recording of this webinar. And drop me a note if you have any questions. Feel free to connect on LinkedIn. I'm easy to find, well connected. And thank you for coming. And thank you, Rob, again for hosting. We appreciate it. Have a good day, everybody.